It's about time you showed up, Pops. You're the only hope for our world.
So first off, thank you for taking the time today to do this interview. I'm going to bring you guys this Q&A with RiverKinn. We're going to throw out some silly random questions throughout the interview, but in all seriousness, let's actually start with the basics. Tell me a little bit about yourself and your music style.
Well, I'm RiverKinn. I'm from Dayton, Ohio. The name stems specifically from the late actor River Phoenix, the younger brother of Joaquin Phoenix. I'm sure most people probably know. He was a huge inspiration to me and still is when I was growing up. Along with that, me growing up in Ohio in a pretty rural area, I grew up with a cattle and a wheat farm as my backyard essentially. And so basically me and my sister and all the kids in the neighborhood, we would spend most of our time down in the woods, like at the river, skipping rocks or doing whatever. So rivers in general are kind of an important thing to me. Kin in Japanese means gold. And also most people know kinfolk, family. The kind of long and short of it is River Phoenix and family. As for my music, it really is kind of an amalgamation, a combination of all the different styles of music that I grew up listening to, grew up interested in, that deeply affected me in, my formative years through high school and stuff like that. Nu metal and pop punk and that sort of mix of hip hop and rock and roll. That's really sort of the basis of my style in terms of the genre or whatever you want to call it.
What made you get into music?
Well, I was always around music. Both of my uncles on my mother's side were in pretty commercially successful bands in the 80s. So I was always around the creation of music, not
Right.
just the consumption of it. So for me, I saw that from a very early age as an option, as something that is a viable outcome for life and for a career or for, a choice of your path. And so for me to be around that and to be around instruments a lot and to be around people, picking something up and making a sound with it rather than just pressing play on the radio and listening to a song and liking it,
Right.
kind of from a really, really early age, from earlier than I can even remember, was extremely, important to me and important to my family. So I saw that so early on, I didn't really know any different. Making music was always sort of just something that was around and there. And so for me, it was kind of a natural, obvious progression for me to do that.
What do your parents think about you making music?
For the longest time, they weren't really that sure about it. And I think especially my mom, knowing her brothers, went through probably a lot of hardships in their route through music personally. And doing any kind of creative thing or entertainment in general as an industry is not exactly the most secure career path to choose. They wanted me maybe to choose something that had a little more security to it.
Yeah.
But nowadays, especially now that I have sort of, I guess, numbers or whatever, I have some statistics I can actually show them to say, hey, this is working, and look, it sort of solidifies it to them that this is a viable choice for me. So nowadays, they're extremely supportive, and especially now that my music has kind of taken a turn to be a little bit more accessible to a broader audience. I'm not necessarily singing or rapping about doing drugs or doing whatever,
Yeah.
So my parents, there's plenty of songs now, probably more than less of my music they can actually listen to and enjoy it and see that there's some musical and artistic value to it beyond being something trendy or, certainly they're extremely supportive now. And I'm really grateful for that. I really appreciate the fact that they have kind of come around to it now.
What are some of your favorite bands or artists?
Well, my favorite band of all time is Linkin Park. Always has been, probably always will be. It was the first CD that I ever bought on my own was Meteora by Linkin Park.
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea what the band was at all. I just saw this really cool album cover of a guy doing graffiti, and I wanted to get it. My parents, I remember being at Best Buy and handing it to them, and I was like, oh, it doesn't have a parental advisory sticker. My parents were pretty strict when I was growing up.
Yeah.
And so I found a CD that I really wanted, didn't have a parental advisory sticker on it. I was like, there's no excuse for them not to buy it. And I remember watching them deliberate in the aisle at Best Buy, going back when I was like, should we let him get this? Like, yeah, whatever. And then we got in the car and we started listening to it like almost immediately. And my mom knows every word to Meteora now. Definitely Linkin Park, Slipknot, Korn, Limp Bizkit. I listened to a lot of, like, in the early 2000s, like the kind of pop punk hardcore scene, like A Day to Remember, For You're Strong, Attack Attack. Gorillaz is also a huge favorite of mine. I love just the mix of sort of that electronic sound with some hip hop and some sort of rock singing, and I love anything with a British accent too. But Damon Albarn is a genius, so I would have to say Gorillaz is easily one of my favorite bands. But I'm also a big fan of some older stuff. I love Bjork. I love Enya. I love Norah Jones. I love, even John Mayer and Jack Johnson and some
Yeah.
really, acoustic stuff. So I'm kind of all across the board. Even Justin Timberlake, I'm a huge fan. So
Yeah.
it's hard for me to really necessarily nitpick and pinpoint exactly what is my favorite, but definitely my biggest influences are that kind of music I listened to growing up, like Linkin Park and all that.
What was their first album? Hybrid Theory?
Hybrid Theory, also a
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah. I remember getting that album and just going into the ninth grade, and man, that was years ago. So if you could collaborate with one artist, dead or alive, who would it be?
Ooh, that's tough. I mean, I think an obvious answer to that, especially based on what I've been saying, to do a song with Linkin Park, you know, pre Chester's death, rest in peace.
Right.
Uh, that would be fantastic. But at this point, I would love to be involved with a Gorillaz project, Damon Albarn, to be a feature even just on a Gorillaz song. I think would be a dream come true for me, for sure.
Do you believe in ghosts?
Absolutely. I feel like I've seen them. I feel like I've been haunted maybe before, or somehow, followed by a spirit of some kind. And I definitely believe that there's even just like trace amounts of a person left after they pass,
Hmm.
whether you want to call it a ghost or a spirit or whatever. That's up for debate, but I think that you don't necessarily 100% leave when you're dead. I think that maybe there is some amount of you that's left afterwards that might manifest itself in the form of what we would see as a ghost, or feel or experience as a ghost or spirit or whatever. But definitely, I think something along those lines exists in our world.
You're talking about playing guitar and everything. We've seen that in some of your music videos. When did you start playing guitar?
Uh, I would like mess around with guitars and stuff when I was really little, but like I didn't really kind of start, I guess, learning how to play. I would have been, I guess, maybe 10 or 11 years old.
Hmm.
I think like fifth grade when I started really like learning how to play a guitar and
Do you play any other instruments or mainly the guitar?
I would say guitar is probably what I'm best at, but I also play keys. I can play drums. I can play bass. Bass is pretty similar to guitar, so that's not that far off. Um, I can play woodwinds a little bit. Strings, not as great. Violin and stuff is pretty difficult, but I have a violin. I have an automaton. I don't know if you know what those are. It's like that
Mm-mm.
little thing. Bass, you like squeeze it, and it's like an electronic violin essentially.
Oh, okay.
I have a ukulele. Uh, Obviously, beat pads and stuff. That's kind of a different realm altogether. Generally, if you hand me any instrument, you give me about an hour, I can play it. I don't know even how to read music. Don't have any classical training in any instrument. But if you give me something, I can figure it out. I'm blessed with this natural gift of being able to figure out instruments pretty easily. So, but guitar is definitely my forte. If I'm gonna pick one, it's guitar.
So let's talk about your new album, The Mansion in My Nightmare. Some of my favorite tracks on this album is Blood on the Floor, No Fair, and Compulsive. These songs in particular give me a chill wave or a synth wave vibe to them. Is that the route you wanted to take with this album?
Well, I'm glad that you noticed maybe not what I wouldn't necessarily use the technology of synthwave, but I know exactly what you're saying is more of like an electronic sound.
Mhm.
My previous albums have been kind of a mix of styles. You go from one song that's like a hip hop song, and then the next song is a sort of more of a sing-songy track, and then you've got some screaming and stuff in there, and it's like from track to track, very different styles. Whereas this one, I really wanted to focus a specific, the sound I wanted to be cohesive across the whole board.
Mhm.
And I wanted to do an electronic based. almost 80s synth sort
Yeah.
of sound. That was kind of my main inspiration and goal for this album, was to do something that was a little bit more electronic based in the production and a lot less like hip hop rappy in its delivery with vocals. The inspiration of it is, if you listen to the first track to the skit, it's much more about sort of a dreamscape. It's an actual dream that I've had recurring for years and years and years, of me coming up upon this abandoned mansion, and there's whales flying in the sky, and it's obviously a dream. It's hard to kind of put everything together, but I wanted to, in a way, portray the feel of that dream by having sort of these like very synthy, uh, atmospheric sort of sounding beats with lots of reverberation and stuff in the vocals, and to create sort of this dreamscape within the sound, not just visually by talking about it in the skit or whatever, but very much so it was inspired by that sort of synth wave, or whatever you want to call it, that electronic sort of style.
It works really well. It's a great album.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate that.
I notice you throw in clips from Starfox 64. Can you explain like why those are used?
Fox in general, like even people sometimes call me Fox, but my name on all social media is Fox. Obviously my whatever is RiverKinn, but my username and stuff is Fox. Fox McCloud is like my kind of mascot, I guess. Just the fox in general as an animal is kind of my mascot. I mean, even I have a nine-tailed fox on my arm. It's like in all of my merchandise and stuff. Like the fox is kind of, for some reason, my spirit animal, if you want to call it that.
Gotcha.
I really can't explain it. Why? It's always been my favorite animal. I really don't know where it came from. I remember one time I was really little, my mom took my sister and I to the zoo, and the gift shop, and she said, you can get one thing, whatever you want, you can get one thing. And they had this wall of masks, and it had every animal you can imagine, lions and tigers and giraffes and monkeys and everything. And I picked the fox mask. It's like that. For some reason, the one animal that's not even at the zoo, it's like a regular woodland animal I see in my backyard every morning or whatever.
Yeah.
It's the one that I wanted. And so for some reason, I've just had an affinity towards foxes. It's hard for me to even understand because it's just always been there. But the Starfox 64 sample, Starfox 64 being probably one of my favorite video games of all time. I've played through it 100%, hundreds of times.
Oh yeah.
The sample is almost like, I guess, my tag or something, I want to call it, that sort of call line of my song. When you hear that, it's about to be a RiverKinn song. So it's about time you showed up, Fox.
Right.
That is sort of like my thing now, and it became that without me even really trying, and now it's too late. So that's just sort of my call line now.
Do you use that as like an intro when you're, doing a show or something like that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's not necessarily an intro, but I usually do like a song or two, and then and it like pauses, like it goes from like song to song, and then there's a big, that explosion sound or whatever, and then there's silence, and then it just says the tag, it's about time you showed up, Fox. It's like me on stage, and everybody, like, I just did a show in Phoenix, and before the tag even came on, someone in the crowd yelled, "It's about time you showed up,
Nice.
Fox."
It's a cool tag. It's something that is unique, and I haven't heard used anywhere else. So it was cool to hear that sample.
And anyone who does know where it's from, I immediately have a connection with, because of my personal experience back with that game. And like, if they come up to me and know where it's from, then we immediately have something in common, right?
Yeah. So aside of Starfox, what are some other favorite video games of yours?
Well, there's a lot of N64 titles. I really liked like third-person platformers, like collectathons, stuff like Super Mario 64, Banjo-Kazooie, that vein of game. Even stuff on like PlayStation, like Jak and Daxter is one of my favorite games for sure. Majora's Mask is probably my favorite Zelda game. Link's Awakening is also a really good one on the OG Game Boy. I'm excited for that reboot they're doing, that new Switch putting together. But obviously, Ocarina of Time is kind of a no-brainer. That's a great video game. Star Fox 64. maybe a moment of contention, but Star Fox Adventures on the GameCube is one of my favorite games. A lot of people don't like that game, especially Star Fox. But I'm a huge Zelda fan and a huge Star Fox fan, so that game kind of basically checked both boxes for me at once. Uh, I really like the Red Dead Redemption series. I'm a huge fan of that. I'm a big Western fan, so that game kind of pretty much did it for me in every aspect. The original Halo Combat Evolved, is one of my favorite games. The Half-Life series, Half-Life 1 and 2, both really fantastic games. The Jedi Knight series, Jedi Outcast, one of the best Star Wars games ever made.
Yeah.
I would also probably say Elder Scrolls. Oblivion is easily my favorite one. Skyrim is a great game, don't get me wrong, but I think Oblivion has a little bit more color, a little bit more character to it than Skyrim. And I'm also a pretty big fan of Inside and Limbo and those like kind of puzzle solving atmospheric side scrollers. That kind of game. I really like that sort of style of game. Things that are physics based really get me. Where the control scheme is simple. You've only got basically like a jump and a grab and a move. So stuff like that. And I'm a huge, obviously, like Tony Hawk Pro Skater and the Skate franchise. And like I'm not a big like FIFA or Madden guy, but when it comes to extreme sports games like 1080 snowboarding or Tony Hawk or Skate, that kind of stuff really does it for me as well.
I noticed in one of your songs you actually have named Shadow Temple. Is that like a calling to Zelda?
Yeah, actually, if you go back through my back catalog as RiverKinn, I have Water Temple, Fire Temple, and Shadow Temple. And eventually I'll release like probably a remastered version of all of them and put it on a tape called like Ocarina or Temples or something like that, you know.
If there was a zombie apocalypse that were to happen, what weapon do you choose?
I'm probably more of a katana type guy, you know. I'd probably go with a katana. I'm not really a gun person in terms of, you know, my choice of weapons. I like melee.
Yeah.
So I'd probably go with a katana, maybe even like a broadsword, like some Guts Berserk type sword, you know, big, oversized, you know, Cloud Stripe type sword.
What are some of your favorite movies?
Fight Club is my favorite movie of all time. I've seen it thousands of times. I could recite every single line to you right now. Running Scared with Paul Walker, probably the best Paul Walker film there ever is, R.I.P. Definitely stop motion films in general. I love stop motion animation, so Nightmare Before Christmas, Coraline, basically any Henry Selick film. Even stuff like Monster House or even the new Spider-Man, where it's almost animated stop motion. Even the Lego movies, it's still CGI, but they do the animation at a frame rate that makes it look stop motion.
Yeah.
I just love sort of aesthetic of, you know, frame by frame movement. Other films, I'm a huge fan of Studio Ghibli. Every Miyazaki film ever made, I own on DVD and Blu-ray. Princess Mononoke is a huge inspiration to me, both musically and visually, and just aesthetically. That film is pretty much perfect in my book. Or Howl's Moving Castle. I mean, I have blue hair because I want to look like Howl. So I got the earrings and everything. Yeah, definitely a lot of like anime feature films is a lot of my inspiration. Akira, you know, Ninja Scroll, stuff like that. Definitely.
As far as where you're at right now, what do you feel is your greatest accomplishment thus far?
Probably just persevering. There's been so many moments when it would be so easy and make so much sense for me to have quit, and I didn't. So I think probably my greatest accomplishment, or my, you know, what I'm proudest of at this point in my personal journey through music or whatever, I would say probably is the fact that I'm still doing it, and that I'm still here, and I'm still kicking, and I'm still making music and getting better and better and better every day. And, you know, and I have not let these moments of, you know, self-doubt or self-loathing or self-deprecation or whatever, I've never not let them stop me from continuing upon my path, because it'd be so easy to just quit and, you know, not get on that plane or not walk up on that stage or not put the album out. And sometimes it sounds so nice to just not do it. And then I have to remind myself, like, I didn't come this far to stop now. And to see the aftermath of, like, okay, I got on that plane and I did get on that stage and I did put that album out. And then what did that bring me? Where am I now because of that? That's probably my greatest accomplishment here. And obviously, it's amazing to be able to touch as many people in their lives as I've been able to with my music. And the internet makes it possible to reach basically the entire world in a second.
Yeah.
And to read some of the messages that people have sent me and told me their, personal stories and experiences with my music and the things that my music has done for them in their lives or helped them get through their experiences. Some of those stories have like absolutely blown me away and changed my perception of what this actually is. And at this point, it's bigger than just me. And I can't, my moments of doubt are so insignificant compared to what it would mean to these people if I decided to back off.
That's really inspiring too, because you think of the youth and everything, and people just giving up so easily and not keeping up on whatever is their passion. A couple questions from the subscribers on my channel here. If you weren't pursuing music, what would you be doing as a career?
I would probably be pursuing film. I actually went to film school,
Okay.
and for the longest, that was my kind of end game. I wanted to be a filmmaker. I wanted to be sort of a Clint Eastwood type, a writer, director, actor. I wanted to write and direct my own films that I starred in and do that. So I'd probably still be pursuing that if it weren't for music, honestly. If not for that, I'm sure I'd be an artist of some kind. I love illustration. I love uh, drawing and drawing. And I love animation, and maybe I'd be a tattoo artist or an animator or something like that. But certainly something in the realm of art or entertainment.
What is the biggest sacrifice you've had to make in your musical journey?
I would say a normal life. Like there's never really any moment of respite. It's a constant, especially working for myself.
Hmm.
And I don't like I produce all my own music. I record and mix and master everything myself. Like my work ethic is based on my ability to work, not on someone. Like I don't have a manager really. I don't have necessarily like a label in my ear talking saying, "Oh, we've got to get this album out by this date." So it's all on me, and so I don't really have a moment of rest generally.
Hmm.
Uh, I think that the sacrifice of that and the sacrifice of privacy, people want to know everything about you and where you're at and what you're doing all the time. And even in my hometown, it's like now getting harder and harder to go out without running into somebody who wants to talk to me about something or recognizes me for something or, and to kind of sacrifice that normal, regular life for this is at times it sounds really great to not be RiverKinn, but outside of that, the biggest sacrifice, I can't even really think of one. It's I would be sacrificing my life now to not do this. So it's all relative. Like when you're here, you don't really notice it. You don't really notice that you made any kind of sacrifice because you don't know anything different, and I wouldn't want to.
Who are some role models or influences in your life?
Growing up, my biggest role models were Bam Margera and let me think who else. Eminem was a huge role model to me. I read his autobiography and his like kind of come up story, but his story in general is pretty remarkable. Um, I think that my friends, honestly, are probably the biggest role models to me. The people that I keep around me, because I see them doing good, and a lot of my friends are musicians, and to see them succeeding in what I'm also doing pushes me to want to succeed in what I'm doing as well. Because it looks more possible, but B, it is so close to home, and I want to be part of that. And I want to be the role model to them as much as they are to me. So to keep that sort of inner circle going, and we all motivate each other and push each other and are inspired by each other, that kind of is this sort of symbiotic, perpetual relationship that we have.
I've seen, I believe, some videos of your brother doing BMX stunts. Is that actually him on
Yeah,
YouTube? Okay.
he's is one of the most talented BMX riders I've ever seen in my entire life. But this guy can ride BMX, like jumping off roofs and being ridiculous. Like I want to say he's probably, in my personal life, the most talented BMX rider I've ever met personally. Obviously, you look at somebody like Dave Mira, that's like
Right.
ridiculous. Never met anybody who does it like that. But Nolan is a beast behind the bars. That's all I can say. He is intense.
Do you have any special talents or hobbies outside of music?
I mean, I ride BMX, but I'm not fantastic at it. Definitely not as good as Nolan. Um, Outside of music, I like drawing, artistic, like illustration and stuff. All of my merchandise and stuff is all hand illustrated by myself. My artwork for all of my songs and singles and albums and stuff is all done by me. I would say probably illustration and artwork and graphic design and stuff like that. That's probably one of my biggest hobbies outside of music that I also, obviously I can apply it to music and what
Yeah.
I'm doing. But I'll sit and draw just to draw. I have, sheets on sheets on sheets of just sketches and doodles and drawings and stuff. I'm also a pretty good cook. I can cook up some mean wings. I can make breakfast better than probably most people could. This is gonna sound crazy, but I really highly believe that I have some sort of weird natural affinity with animals. Like I feel like I can talk to dogs. I feel like I can communicate with animals in a different way than most people can. There's dogs that people will be like, oh, he's not friendly, and the dog will just come sit right next to me and be, we'll be best friends immediately. And they'll be like, how did you do that? And I'll be like, I don't know. This is how I am.
Random oddball question for you. We talked about ghosts. Do you believe in aliens?
Oh yeah, duh, definitely. I feel like I've done it multiple times, my guy. Absolutely, I believe in aliens. There's
Uh,
no, that's it's. I feel like it's so selfish and too proud to say that we are the most intelligent life in this ever infinitely expanding universe that we live in. We are on the tiniest little speck in this giant thing.
um, what's the scariest experience you've ever had in your life?
I want to say probably like 7 or 8 years old, and I was at a pool, and I just started learning how to swim, and I came up for air after swimming underwater, and I came up underneath somebody's raft, and I couldn't, like, it was like my head hit the raft, and I was like basically drowning in the raft. Probably the scariest experience. I'm terrified of drowning. It's probably my biggest fear, that or dark water, and I am still to this day terrified of drowning. I love kayaking. I love sailing. I love swimming. Like, I'm obsessed with being in water and around water, but the death by water is my biggest fear. Absolutely.
Do you have any upcoming music videos that we can keep an eye out for?
Absolutely. When I was just in Texas, I just did a Texas tour, like I want to say a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. And when I was down there, I have a collaboration with my friend Spaceman Zach. We just shot a video for our collab song "How Did I End Up Like This." We shot that in Austin, Texas. So that's coming out soon. Shot by T Aubrey. Shout out to my guy T Aubrey and Spaceman Zach. I shot a video when I was in Los Angeles with my boy Turtle for Uptight, my pretty heavy hardcore song I just dropped a couple months ago. That video hopefully is going to be coming out soon. And I've been working on a couple other projects too. I'm gonna keep a little under wraps, but don't worry, there's
Sure.
gonna be. I've been kind of slacking on my YouTube game lately for my music videos. I've never really been big on dropping music videos, but I know that that's something I need to start doing heavily. So I've been trying to get that up. So don't worry, there's gonna be a lot.
What's one piece of advice you would have given your younger self?
Stop worrying so much. Uh, I had so much anxiety when I was younger, and I tried so hard to be cool or to fit in or to, be whatever people thought, like whatever I thought people wanted me to be or would think was cool or, whatever you want to say. And I don't regret that because it has turned me into who I am now. But I
Mm.
feel like I could have also been who I am now a lot earlier if I had been a little bit more down to earth about a lot of the stuff that I was thinking back then. So I would say to my younger self, like, don't worry, it's all going to work out. Just, let it play its course.
Is there any other big plans or things you would want anyone to know going forward?
Well, I'm going to have a couple more projects coming out this year. Expect one around Halloween time that's going to be a little darker and a little heavier. Expect another one maybe before or a little after that's going to be pretty much more back to my acoustic sort of centric production. Uh, and a lot more shows. I'm getting back on the road again as soon as I possibly can. Uh, Doing some international shows, hopefully here in the next couple of months. So, Canada and hopefully Europe. I'm going to be seeing y'all soon. And like I said, more music videos, more content on YouTube, uh, just more of everything, essentially. I'm just going to kick it kind of into high gear now that things are.
As far as this Q&A goes, that's pretty much all the questions I had. Do want to thank you for taking time out of your day to do this. We really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure, bro. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me about this.
Like I said, we really appreciate what you're doing, and we look forward to seeing what you have in store for us in the future.
Well, thank you so much, and best wishes to you and the family and everybody, like all your subscribers. I really can't thank y'all enough for the support and the love and taking the time to even give a shit about me, for real. Hopefully we can do another one of these in a year or two, and then we'll be like looking back at this one and comparing.
Well, thanks, man. That's all I had for you today.
Thank you so much. You're watching Living with Perks on YouTube. My guy. Thank you guys so much. My name's RiverKinn. Thank you again. I love you guys so much.
Me down, blood on the floor, replace me now. You've done it before. You love me less, I hate you more. I don't care if I don't make it. Break me down, blood on the floor, replace me now.